All right, so today's webinar is going to be about reporting basics. So we have a webinar next week about a little bit more advanced concepts in reporting. But the point of this webinar is to kind of lay the foundation of reporting and just to get a mindset that reporting is not hard, okay? Reporting has, you know, for a lot of other systems can be very difficult. I think it gets a bad name in that way. But in Project Team, and as we go through this, I hope you find that it really is not very hard at all. You just got to follow the steps, and then you can get the data that you need. This is the second to last webinar that we are hosting, or that is scheduled so far in our Lunch and Learn series. And it's been a great series that we've kind of put together for the last so many weeks. I think we will continue this, but today's webinar is reporting basics, and then next week's webinar would be advanced concepts. Just to give a quick introduction, my name is Josh Whitmer, and I am going to be today's presenter. The agenda here is a little bit off, but let's do a quick introduction. We'll spend 30 minutes actually not in the company forums, that was last week's webinar, but we'll do reporting basics. And then at the end of the session, we can do a quick question and answers based on what you all submit. So in your GoToWebinar area, probably somewhere on the right-hand side of your screen, there should be an area that you can submit questions, and I'll make sure that I answer those at the end of the presentation. And then the last kind of agenda slide here is just, of course, we are social, so we do post these webinars on our different social media outlets, especially YouTube for earlier webinars and things like that. So make sure you keep an eye on that, or if somebody that you know was supposed to be on this webinar but missed it, you can find the old presentations there. So before we get into the demo of reporting, I want to go over the different report types that we offer. So if you're in Project Team, you can create a bunch of different types of reports. In some ways, a lot of them will eventually lead you to the same place, but this is just kind of an overview of the types of things that you can create. Some of these you may, if you are an existing user, you may have already used before, and some not. Today, I'm going to focus mostly on advanced reports, and I typically say when talking to people in training or in a sales process, don't let the word advanced scare you. It's not really that hard. So advanced reports as an option are by far the most flexible of your reporting types. It gives you a Microsoft Excel-like interface, and you can format your reports in any way that you want, with colors, with logos, all that good stuff. Next is a dashboard. And what is a dashboard versus a report? In our terminology, the dashboard is a much more visual representation of the reporting data that you have. So in our case, when I say that I want to create a new dashboard, I am really pulling in things like charts. I might pull in some existing reports, so tabular report type of data, but I also want to include filters and things like that. It's a better way to show at a very high level kind of a view into the project, and then you can do things like drill downs into your actual reports or into your actual project data, but the dashboard is much more of a visual view than what a report would give you. The Express reports, in some ways, are kind of like the first half of the advanced reports. So this is just kind of the setup of an advanced report, and then you can run it. The advantage, maybe, of an Express report is that you don't need to get into the quote-unquote Excel-like interface of an advanced report. You just drag and drop things around, and then it kind of just works for you. There's not much that you can do formatting-wise, but it gives you the data, and that's the point of the Express part. Maybe I don't care about the formatting, I just want the data very quickly, and you can create that in Express. In an Express report, however, at any point, you can turn your Express report into an advanced report, okay? So you can convert at some later time. So maybe for some, it's a good place to start. But again, I always kind of recommend the advanced reports anyways. A cross-tab report is a much more complex report in where you can pivot data, lots of good examples of this, but it's beyond the topic of our webinar today. And then finally, a change report is once you have different reports, maybe I have a report for an archive at the end of my project, which I want to show all of my RFIs and my specifications and my submittals and my drawings and things like that. Instead of printing individual reports or even individual forms, I can just roll all of those things into a common output, and that would be through a change report. In your change report, you can decide what type of output you want, whether that's PDF, Excel, or others, and it'll just kind of join all of your different reports into one. My last set of slides here, but before I actually get in and show some examples. When I'm setting up my report, and I'm going to focus on the advanced report side, the first thing that I see is a page that has this type of information. I've got a name, a category, a sort, a filter, a layout, etc. I'll go through and show a real-world example of this, but before I do, I just want to kind of spend time in explaining what those tabs are all about. The first one is your name tab. The name is just naming the report. At the bottom of the screen, you can provide a description of the report if you wanted to. And the second thing you're going to need to do is choose one of the folders that you're going to put your report in. By default, at the top level, we have 3 folders. There's the My Access folder, which means only you on the project can access that folder and therefore access those reports. So if you put something in the My Access, it's a really good place for something like if you're drafting up a report, but remember, only you can see it. In the My Company Access, there are actually 2 subfolders within that. One of them is for the company reports, which we'll go over in our next webinar. But the second is custom reports that you put into the project for your company only. That means that no matter who's on your project and who you're connected to, only the users from your company on the project would have access to those reports. And then finally, the all access reports are for all users. So maybe I'm connected to subcontractors and architects, or maybe I'm an owner and I'm connected downstream. Doesn't really matter. If you put reports in there, then everybody would be able to see those reports. However, keep in mind, everything is still based on access. So if I have 100 different RFIs and I pull that into a report, my contractor only has 1 RFI and he runs that same report, he would only see 1 RFI in that report. So even though these folders are about access, the access of the forms still stays as well. The second tab that we have here is called categories. Okay, categories are going to include things like my form types, collections, workflow data, project information, project directory, and different logos, whether that's your project logo, your company logo, etc. Anytime that you create a new custom form, that means it's a new category in your reports. If you add a new custom field, which is a collection, onto a form, that's a new category in your reports. So I'll show an example of that with a system form, an RFI, and then a custom collection that I've added to that form, which should also be a category. Third is the sorts, and here you can decide what order you want to display your reporting data. So if you have something like a simple RFI log and you have an RFI number on there, do you want to sort that in ascending or descending order? Or do I want to start at 1 and work my way down to 100? Or do I want to start with 100 and work my way down to 1? So just decide what kind of sorts you want. For making groups, sorts are going to be very important. So if we want to group data in any way, we're going to have to include a sort. And then I have my filters. So a filter is what data do you want to show versus what data do you want to hide or filter out. So if I'm creating an RFI report and I just want to show things that are still open or RFIs that are still open, I can filter out any of the closed RFIs. So those won't show in my report. You can add filters here, or you can add filters kind of dynamically that you can switch on or off a filter when the actual report is running. And then finally, you have the layout. And the layout is just a very quick way to add the different columns of your report before you finish through this wizard, and then again, you get to that Excel-like interface. So I'm going to go through each one of these 5 steps in an actual example, and we'll kind of see how that interacts with our real data. So if I go into project team, and I'm going to assume a lot of the people on the call are actual users, so you know how to get to this page. But if you're not a user, that's okay too. Just kind of just remember this webinar is mostly about reporting. Within a project, so I'm in this webinar sample project, I can see on the left-hand side, I have an option called reports. I click into reports. It's going to take me to a page that gives me kind of the report home page. At the top of the screen, on the left-hand side, I have this plus button, which is going to give me those options that we saw in that PowerPoint. Advanced, dashboards, reports, whatever we want to create in there. Like I mentioned before, I'm actually going to create an advanced report. Before I do that, I do want to check out some of my data though, so we can see what this report is actually going to be showing. So I'm going to click on forms, and I'm going to create a new report on my RFIs, because that's kind of a standard document a lot of people use. So I open this into a new tab here. I can look and see my RFI log. In my RFI log, I see that I have 7 total RFIs. And if I click into one of these RFIs, I see the different fields available to me. All of these fields are available to pull into reports. So I've got an RFI number, subject, question, due date, answer, cost impact, and schedule impact. According to the PowerPoint, what we just discussed, the RFI is a form type, and therefore that is a category in our reports. Each one of these fields is just a field. It has nothing, I mean, these are within that category. However, there is a reviewer's field on here, which is actually called a collection, okay, which is going to hold its own set of fields or a collection of fields. Within that, we've got a number, a reviewer name, and a reviewer notes. Because we've added a collection on our RFI form, this reviewers is also a category that we can pull into our reports. And by default, project team is going to automatically join the collections that you have to the top level forms that they are related. Okay. So let's go back into a reporting area. Let's say that we want to create a brand new report. So I'm going to say plus, and I'm just going to choose advanced report. Once I do that, I get to a page that we just went over kind of on the PowerPoint, which shows me that I have a name, category, sorts, filters, etc. Let's go in here and call this thing my webinar RFI example report, maybe. Okay. So I've added a name. I can put it in the my access only, again, because maybe I'm drafting this up before I want to let anybody else run it. I can include a description, and then I can either click on categories to get to the next tab, or at the bottom right, I can always click the next button. So this is going to guide you through the little wizard here, but I just typically stay up top. So I'm going to say categories to go next. Here you can see all of the different categories that I have access to on my project. Okay. In here, you can see things like RFIs. Okay, that's my form type, and that's actually what I do want to pull over. I also see the collection that we just looked at within my form called reviewers that was on my RFI. So it's going to show in here as request for information - reviewers. If I wanted to pull both of those in, I could just drag and drop. Before I do that, I do want to kind of show there's a couple other categories here that are outside of what is typically a form type or a collection, something like projects. That's your general project information, your project logo. There's also things like your workflow history and your workflow steps or summaries. This is going to allow you to, report on where, like ball in court reporting or other reporting needs that you have if you're utilizing the workflow tools within project team. If you are using something like the workflow tools, you can always create joins, which would be an advanced concept. to other form types. So if I want to say my workflow summary, show me where all of my RFIs currently sit, and I also want to show data about the RFI, I would just join to the actual RFI category, and then I can show whatever data that I want to show. By default, Project Team is going to only show you categories that make sense through the automatic joins that happen. So right now I can see all of these because I don't have any categories selected. I can see all of these categories available to me. That's why they show in the black text. If I take RFIs and I just drag it over to the thing that I want to show in my report, so this is my categories that I'm using, so I drop that in there, you'll notice that all of these other categories have gone gray. That's because RFIs by default really have nothing to do with meetings or punch list items or specs. They don't know too much about each other. I could always create a manual join to do that, but right now they don't know. If I do want to, create my own manual joins, no matter what, I'm going to include my projects category. If I pull projects in there, you'll see everything else opens up for me. Okay, this is going to allow me to create those joins. For now, again, that's more advanced, so I'm going to get rid of the projects category. It's going to go ahead and gray out everything else, but you will notice that RFIs-reviewers is open because Project Team does know that that category is on the RFI form, and therefore it creates a default join. For now, I'm going to start off by not pulling the reviewers on. All of these different options, category, sorts, filters, you can do them now in the wizard, or you can do them at any later point. So I'm just kind of showing the difference between that. For now, I'm just going to pull in RFIs. I'm going to leave reviewers, and I'm going to go on to my sorts. What do I want to sort my report by? It makes sense that maybe I pull in the RFI number, but right now it's showing ascending, but maybe I change that to descending to show the larger numbers up top, and it makes sense to me that way. You can pull in multiple sorts if we wanted to, but that makes sense for now. You do not need a sort, but in a lot of ways it's going to be better if you do, so that you don't just get randomly sorted data. Next, I can do filters. I'm going to skip filters for now because I do want to show all of my different RFIs, but if I only wanted to see things with maybe a cost impact, I could pull that in. Okay. For now, I'm not going to show that, so I'm going to get rid of that filter. And then finally, I get to my layout. The layout screen is going to show a bunch of different areas of the screen. I got the available fields here. Right now, I only have the RFI category. If I had more than one category, I could choose between those categories on the side. But since I just have RFIs, this makes sense. This window on the right-hand side is just where I'm going to pull the different fields over. Okay. And then on the bottom, it's going to show me kind of an example of what the report's going to look like. And again, this is very basic. It's not any formatting, but we will add our formatting in a second. So I'm going to say I do want to pull in RFI number, and you can see RFI number appears in my sample report. Then I'm going to take my subject. I might take my question, my due date, my answer, my cost impact, and my schedule impact. Okay, so I pulled all of these different fields right into the form or to the report here. At this point, I'm ready to finish because there's no more tabs at the top, so I can just click finish, and it'll take me to the report editor of my report here. At this point, I have a report, and it will work. Okay, it's not going to be pretty because I didn't add any formatting at all, but it will work. So if I just say run report, that shows me that I have I think 7 RFIs on this project. So here it goes. The question and the answer in there. So again, it's not very, it does give me all of these pages. So I've got 6, 5, and then a few other pages, one with less text. So that all makes sense. Again, not very pretty. If we want to add format at the top of the screen, we see our tabs are going to build every time you either run a report, or if you can always click on a tab. Like I'm going to go between the run the report and the edit mode of the report. And if I don't want to see this other stuff around, I can always close all other tabs. It'll just give me that one single tab. What I typically do for a report, especially if there's a lot of information on it, and maybe I wouldn't consider this a ton of information, but it's enough that things get a little bit squished, is I go to the options area within the little gear icon and go to general. And I almost always fit to the page width. And again, if there's a lot of data, I turn my page to be landscape. I think it just makes a little bit more sense. So I'll say okay. Once I do that, if I run this report again, we'll see that there's a little bit more data and my page is looking landscape, so there's a little bit more room to show that data. So this is looking, pretty good. In this view here, there's other information that I want to change. Okay, and we'll go through this with the different formatting. This is basic formatting. On the left-hand side, I have RFI number. On my form, I think I showed 00 and then a number. So it was a 3-digit number. So if I get up to the hundreds, things, stay sorted in the right way. I have a subject. I have a question, which should probably have more space to it. I've got a date that maybe I want to center. An answer that has good, it's okay, but maybe more space. My cost impact is showing me a number, but I'd like that to look more like currency. And then I've got a cost impact that just says true or false. So that's okay. I can go into the edit mode again. I can say RFI number doesn't need to be that wide, so I'll kind of squish that in there. The RFI number was just showing the 1 digit. I can go up to my ribbon or my toolbar up here. I have a lot of options, just like you would in Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word or other applications, to format this. One of the neat things here is this format cell. So if I open that up, it's going to give me options for formatting numbers and text and dates, etc. For now, it's showing me this is general. I'm going to change it to text so that it keeps those double zeros in the beginning and say okay. I also see that my headers are centered and the data is always left justified. RFI number, I do want to also center it, so I'll just center it. My subject looks pretty good. My question definitely needs more room, so I'm going to expand that out. I'm going to take my answer, expand that out as well. The due date field, it looks fine. I'm just going to center it. There are ways, if you wanted to format the date, you can format in pretty much any other way that you want to show it. But for now, I'm just going to keep it to default, but depending on what you want to see, you can always format that date. The cost impact, I do want it to be right justified because typically that makes sense for currency information. I also want it to show a $sign and maybe 2 decimal places at the end to show me that it is dollars. So I can go again to the format cell. This time I'm going to choose number. I'm going to say I want to use a currency symbol, and if we can change that currency symbol if we're using different types of currency. You also can set your currency preferences at the project homepage. Then I'm also going to add 2 decimal places. One thing before I close out this format cells area. In here, I can format the actual data within the cell. I can format things like the border of the cell, and I can format the conditional statements of the cell. So let's say, in some ways, if I wanted to show if there was no cost impact, it should just be, no background color. But if there was a cost impact, I want to show like a light green color. Maybe I even want to make the text within that cell bold or something like that. I could do that through conditional, and I can show more of that on next week's call. So I'm just going to say okay for that. I'm going to right justify that. That looks good. And then schedule impact, I'm just going to center that. If I run this report now, after making some of those changes, the data is starting to look a lot better. There's not a lot of color or formatting in that way, but the data looks good. The spacing looks a lot better. It just kind of makes more sense. Next, I do want to kind of go over some of the formatting. Before I do that, I guess just to highlight the things that I did. I made this a number with the actual text that was entered in the form, so it does give me my leading zeros. I have the due date showing up centered, which looks nice. My cost impact is right justified with the $sign and the 2 decimals, and then my schedule impact is also centered. I've got a bunch of run windows up here now, so again, I'm going to just right close all of the tabs. Now it's nice and clean up top for me. From here, I can do some more formatting. So I'm going to click on A3, RFI number, and then go all the way to this side. And maybe I want to add some color to my report. So I've highlighted the header there. I'm just going to go up to the paint bucket. Maybe I want to say my company is some kind of dark green, and I want to just change the text to white. When you do the background color, a lot of times it doesn't show because it's still highlighted. But if you click out of the cells, you will see that color. Okay, so now I've got green and white. It's looking a little bit nicer for me. I could also, if you remember when I ran it, things were just all kind of white with black text, maybe a little bit hard to decipher where a row ends and a new one begins. So you can always click on the details. You can say section shading, and we can add two different sections here. Okay, so I clicked new twice. I'm going to leave the first rows, or the odd numbered rows, white. And then the even numbered rows, I'm going to do a gray color. It gives you this hex color code in there, but you could also change that however you want. Okay, so if you have another gray or another color that you like better, you can either choose from the color picker or just type in anything that you want. Okay, F5, 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 which is a light gray. Okay, if I say okay there and then run this report, now the report is going to have green. It's going to be spaced a little bit or color shaded nicely, so I can decipher row to row. So this is looking really good. From here, there's one more thing that I want to kind of cover on this webinar, and then I do want to open it up to some questions, and I can kind of show some examples. This is showing me my single category for requests for information. I didn't show anything about my reviewers yet, all right? If I want to show reviewers, I'm going to need to add a new category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the edit mode. I click on the gear icon. If you remember from the wizard that we first used when we were setting up a new report, it had things like provide a name and a description within one tab. Then it asked to choose the categories, and then the sorts, and then the filters. So to get back, if you made a mistake or if you want to edit anything that you did through that wizard, you can always do it through this little gear icon options menu. You cannot get back to the wizard after you finish that wizard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new category. It's going to show me the category that I already have, request for information. I'm also going to search for request for information again. And the other thing that I have available to me, because remember, I don't have the project category in here, that means the others are grayed out. I do have, though, the reviewer. So I'm just going to either drag and drop or click the little arrow to pull it over to the available categories. And then I can say OK. At this point, I've added a category, but really my data is unchanged. However, what I can do now is I want to show the reviewers per RFI within my report. So I'm going to click on the details area. By default, when you first create a report, you have a page header and then a detail section. The page header is only going to show once. Okay? So let's just do this really quickly. If I added another row and I took all of this detail stuff and put it into row 3 and 4, and I have nothing in my detail, remember, if I put something in the header, it's only going to show once in the page header. Same thing with the report header. If I run this report and it's the same exact data, and yes, I added a new category, but it's the same exact data, I'm only getting one RFI back. Why? Because it's just reading the first thing that it found. Remember, we sorted it descending, so we have the top numbers on top. And it's not getting into any of the detail or the repeating information, so it's just showing one thing. If we just pull that information down to the details, just like we had it before, okay, so I'll put it in 4 and 5, or in 6 here, and pull this into 5, okay, and run that again. We get the report that we saw before, where we have repeating rows for the data. However, one thing that we see now that we added a new category in here is we have some data that is repeating too many times, okay? And this is because if we look at our actual RFI, and I'm going to go back there in a second, we have 2 number 7s, we have 2 number 6s, it looks like we have at least 3 number 5s. Why is that? Well, let's go back to our RFI form and check that out. For number 7, looks like we have 2 reviewers. So that's why I'm showing, or that's why in our report it's showing 2 rows for the top level number 7, because it's repeating based on the information that's showing up. If I go back to number 5, RFI number 5, we have 3 reviewers. So that's why it's repeating 3 different times. Okay, so that's obviously wrong. I mean, the data is right, but it's not what we want our report to look like. I don't need all this extra rows showing up. What I do want is to show the reviewers per one of these, or each of these RFIs. So I can go back to edit mode. This time, if I click on details, we talked about page header, we talked about detail. Details of stuff that is repeating. The other area that you can have stuff that is repeating, or data that is repeating, are in your groups, okay? So I'm going to create a new group header, and it's going to say, what do you want to group by? You can only add groups based on your sorts. So I do have a sort on my RFI number. That's why it's giving me my category of my sort and the actual sort. So I'm going to say per RFI and say okay there. Once I do that, I get a new header section. And remember, this is a group header, not my page header. So this group header will actually repeat. What I can do is, in the number 6, I can insert another row. So now I have 2 rows, 6 and 7. It might be hard to see. 6 and 7 within this group header. So group header 6 and 7. I can take something like my RFI number back to my schedule impact and put it in 6. Then I can take all of this data that was in the detail and put it up to the header information. Now I have nothing in my detail. Let's just run it and see what happens. Once I do that, I now see that I'm getting the correct number of data. So I have 7 showing once instead of twice. I have 6 showing once instead of twice. And I have 5 showing once instead of twice. I'm getting a lot of these green bars across the screen because I put that green bar within my group header. So if I go back to edit mode, you see my group header section here. At row number 6 has the green bar. And remember, group headers in detail are always going to repeat. So if I look at the run, I see the green header and the data. Green header and data, green header and data. What's this extra space down here? Well, that's the detail section that we left blank right now. So it's just extra space. On the left-hand side of the screen, we now see both of our categories, RFIs and RFI reviewers, because we pulled both of them in. From here, I can now pull my data from my category into the detail section. So we're repeating the RFI, and then the details is going to be actually the reviewer information. So I can say row number should be in here. I can say reviewer name should be here. And then to give it some space, I'm going to say reviewer notes is over here. This, I don't want this to show blank, so I can actually, just like I can in Excel, highlight by holding Shift and clicking the different cells, highlight whatever I want to see, and then merge those cells together. And then same thing over here, maybe there's more data, so I can shift and hold those things together. Just like I did before, I'm going to center justify that. If I run this right now, what I expect to see is a green bar for every RFI, then each individual RFI data, and then below that, a row for each reviewer that was on in RFI. So if I run this, let's see what happens. Here I can see now the data is looking nice, but maybe, or the data is looking right, but maybe it doesn't look so nice. So I've got my green bar for each RFI, and then each RFI listed, and then within that, I have these reviewers. So I can see 1 and 2, Josh and Wayne, and then 1 and 2, and then 3 for that RFI number 5. Okay, so that all is looking right. My data is right. I just need to format it in some way that makes better sense to me. So to do that, we have a million different options. If I just kind of go through and format this just a little bit here, I might add another row under there. I might say this is the row number. I can name these things however I want. I'm going to grow that and say this is my reviewer name, and I'm going to merge these cells together and say this is the reviewer notes. I'm doing things that we've already learned through this webinar here. I can make this bold. I can color the background to maybe be a black color with white text. And maybe I don't want that green bar showing up each time. So I can take that, and remember, if we put it in the page header, it only shows up once. So I'm going to put it there, and we delete number 6 now. Okay. So this looks, you know, whatever, a little bit nicer. If I want space between each one of these, I could add a little bit of space, you know, in a bunch of different ways. But if I say I want to insert row before, that's going to give me a little bit of space between each one of these page headers and details. So I can run this now, and it's going to give me all of the data in some representation that makes a little bit more sense. So I've got RFI 7 with these 2 reviewers underneath it, RFI 6 with these 2 reviewers underneath it, etc. Okay. So that is a good, I think, basic introduction into reporting. If I click on this information again, let's do this actually, because maybe that's harder to read. I'm going to make this black with white text and make it bold, let's say, and this a dark gray color. Maybe that'll make it a little bit nicer with black text. Okay, so maybe this will be a little bit better, because that last one was a little bit hard to read. Okay. So I've got all my RFIs in black, and I've got other data in white, you know, whatever. I don't, you know, whatever formatting you want to put in here, but the data is looking nice, and you can format this thing however you want. So unlimited options there. I'd like to open it up to questions from here, just to see what people are kind of, and what data maybe you didn't understand, or what you want me to go over again. Okay, the first one is the RFI number a text field in the form, or is it a number? This is a form-related question. If I look at the properties of this, and this gets into customizing, you can always see what the field type is. This says text single line, okay? Right now, this is a text field. However, if you add a field and you want to change that, you have a lot of options. You can make that a number field in case it would not read the leading zeros. Okay, it even says that in the description here. Or you can make it an auto number, in which you can format this thing however you want. So it can show the leading zeros. You can also add prefix and things like that. An auto number would be kind of something that, you know, if I create a new RFI, that's number 1. I can always change it, but it kind of stamps it that way. I create a new RFI, that's number 2, and it goes from there. So you can always kind of decide what fields you want to add. All of those can be pulled into your reports and formatted in any way that you want. If you make a report landscape mode and your printer is capable of handling the other page sizes, can you do that? Yes. So if I go to the general, our page size right now is letter, but you can choose any of the different page sizes that you want to show. So lots of different options with the type of information you want to see. So for example, if I do legal and say okay, and I know I got a big, a lot of headers are very black, but you can see the data is a lot wider. This was the original one in letter format. This is the legal page, and you see the data is a lot wider there. And one of the last questions is references. Right now, you can add references through the reference collection. Okay, on the different panels, you can pull in, like right now, all of the reporting data is really coming from the details panel. On the actual form, if I look at the form, there are other panels on here as well. So if I go to RFI number 7 here, I've got shared with, I've got details, I've got workflows and attachments and reference links, activity and action items. The things that you can report off of right now are the details, obviously, as we've shown, action items, so you can show which actions are related to that. And I can show things like workflows as well. Right now, if the question is about the reference links panel, that does not pull into the reports. However, we probably could add that as a feature enhancement. And what would happen there is the reference links just like workflows and action items are, would be its own category because there's multiple layers of data here that you would have to just join into your report. Another question, are these clickable? So right now, and I hate the way it's all really dark there, so I'm going to make this white again and just turn the text black, and it is what it is. Yes, you can make any of these data points clickable. This is going to get into formulas, and this is the last question, so I will spend a second here. But let's say that within my report, I want to be able to click on the subject and actually get taken to the subject or the actual RFI. So I can click on subject here. I could click on any of these different features or these fields. I can go into the formulas. Formulas, again, will be covered more next week. But here I've got a ton of different formulas, whether I want to sum the data, count the data, do if statements, like that one schedule impact said true or false. Maybe I don't want it to show true or false, but I want it to say yes or no, or I want to show it to a checkbox versus an empty circle. Anything that you want to do, you can do. For now, I'm going to make this a link. So I'm going to look for something called link. And I do have a document link, and it's going to say insert a hyperlink to the actual document, display text that you want to see. So that's exactly what I want. So if I double click onto that, it actually adds or wraps the RFI subject by the document link. And in each formula, it's going to tell you a little bit of help here. So it's going to say document link, document ID, comma, link title, okay, comma, project ID, and that would be outside of the project. But for now, I'm going to say I need, looks like I need document ID in there. I do not have it, so I'm just going to find it within that category. So it's going to link to that document ID. Okay, and then I need to add a comma, and then the subject. That looks really nice. So I can run this report, and you can even, let's just say I want to make this blue. I think it probably will show blue anyways, but just to make it clear. Now, if I run this report, I've got the subject showing in blue. If I actually click on the subject, so let's do like number 4 here. If I click on number 4, it'll actually open up RFI number 4 for me. So you can drill down on your reports however you want to show it, and it'll be able to send that. That also works if I export. So if I export this to, let's say, PDF, or if I export this to an email and I send that email throughout whatever I want to do, and then someone receives this, and assuming they have access, they can be able to click on this and it would open up the actual document for them. So that link is going to carry forward even through your exports to be able to very quickly get back to your data. All right, we are almost exactly at 12:45 here, and I don't see too many more questions. So that is really what I have for you today. I do want to send a reminder that we've been doing this Lunch and Learn series. I think it's been a great series. Today was the 16th on basic reporting. Next week are advanced reports, so we'll dive even deeper into the concepts that I went over today, talk about joins, more formulas, conditional statements, coloring your report however you want. But that is all very exciting for next week. And then for existing users, if you have questions on anything that I went over today and you just can't wait till next week, you can always email support@projectteam.com. For new users, always contact sales@projectteam.com. We do have quick reference guide and a whole help center area within the Project Team application. So if you click on your name, you can always click view help pages to get there. And then, of course, like all of our other webinars, we will be posting this on our YouTube channel and onto our website. So if you want to refer back to this at any point, you certainly can, and that is available to you. So that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. If you have any other questions, feel free to write in an email. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you.